Good morning. I'm Hayden Cooks a Lot, and I'm going to be making some French toast this morning for breakfast. So I'm at the end of the island at my kitchen, and I'm going to plug this item in. Does anybody remember what this is called? Has a temperature control that plugs in. There's no sides, no lid. Yes, it's a griddle. So I got mine at Walmart. And they sell them pretty cheap. I think this one was like $10 or $12, something like that. It's pretty cheap. So I'm gonna plug this thing in. And I already have this inserted into the griddle, a little temperature control, and I'm going to set it at 350 degrees. So I have the dial turned, and then I'm lining up. This one works by lining up the temperature with the red dot that's glowing. So that's going to be heating up while I am making the French toast here. So before I got started, I have my hair up. If I had long sleeves on, they would have been rolled above my elbows. I like to wear short sleeves when I'm cooking. No jewelry, watches, anything on, and the hands are washed. So I'm ready to be preparing my food. So today, I'm going to be using a brioche bread. It's at the end of the loaf here, so as the bread gets a little bit older, that is good for making French toast. So if some of your bread has dried out, perfect for French toast. There's nothing wrong with that because the bread will soak up the liquids that we are going to be putting in the dish. Now, brioche is a French bread, and it has a lot of butter and eggs in it when they make it. I actually prefer to use challah bread. I think it's spelled C-H-A-L-L-A-H, and I get that from the bakeries at some of the grocery stores, and it's a yellowy looking bread, and it looks like it's braided or kind of like lumpy on the top, and that is a Jewish egg bread, and that one is my favorite for making French toast, but the store didn't have any, so I'm going to use the brioche instead. So I got this at Lidl, and it was pretty cheap. I think it was like $1 or something. So I have here the bread. I'll be pulling that out in a second. I have some eggs. I have a foil-lined pizza pan with used eggshells on them. What do I do with this? Well, I use this in my garden. So don't waste your eggshells. Save them. So how I save them is I cover the pizza pan or any other type of pan, whatever, with tin foil. And then as I go to use eggs, I throw the eggshells on here. I store it inside of my oven. So it just sits in here in a cool oven that's not turned on. And then I keep the door closed, which keeps them in there out of the way. And then after I have a mountain of these things here, then when I'm like warming up the oven to cook something, I will let the eggshells heat up. Or you can do like 250 degrees, 300 degrees for like, five minutes or so, not too long. And they will get just slightly a little bit brown on there, but it will kill any salmonella or campylobacter that's on them. And then I pull them out and I cool them off. Sometimes I'll take them out onto my screen porch, put hot pads down, and I let them cool out there because they do let off a little bit of an odor when you do bake them. And then once they're cool, I smash them all up and I save them in jars or bags. And then when I go in my garden to start gardening, I will take a handful of the shells and I crush them up really fine. And when I dig my hole, I put them at the bottom of any pepper plant, tomato plant, and that helps to give calcium to the soil. You can also, after they're baked, the little kids can use them in arts and crafts, but make sure you bake them first. So they could be smashed up and glued on paper. You can paint them, whatever. So there's lots of things you can do with them. So I have a little dish here that is small, so I can have my bread slices that fit in the dish without having too much of a wide dish of surface area. So I can have the bread soak up the egg and milk mixture. So I'm going to crack into this dish 1 egg, and we'll see. I can always do it again to make more if I need it. So I'm going to crack on the inside side of it so I don't make a mess on my counter. Stick my thumbs in that cracked area, kind of like an upside down heart. You see my upside down heart? And now I'm going to put my thumbs in and I'm going to pull this apart. and I'm going to drip, 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 and let that egg drip out. Okay. If you happen to get a piece of eggshell that falls in and you're trying to grab it or use a spoon, it always wiggles away from you. Here's a tip. Take another piece of shell to go in. They're attracted to each other like magnets, and you can pull it right out with another piece of shell. And now I'm going to take this and put that onto my sheet there for storage. There's a little wiggly looking white thing that's attached right next to the yolk, between the yolk and the white part, and that's called the chalazi. And the chalazi is like a little membrane that attaches the yolk to the white part. So anyway, there's nothing wrong with your egg. A lot of people are like, oh, there's something in there. No, that's normal. Okay, the yolk has lots of nutrients in there. There's the most nutrients in the yolk, lots of different things, but that is where the fat is located. The egg white is just pure protein. So, you know, if you don't want to have all the extra fat, you can separate it out and just use the whites if you want. I'm going to go wash my hands. Using the back side of my hand to get the soap. The backside when I turned on the faucet, because I do not want to get any salmonella or campylobacter on the handle or the soap container. All right, hands are clean. Okay, now you can use whole milk, you know, cream. I'm going to use half and half for this. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a shake, and I'm just going to pour in. You can measure, but I'm pouring in I did about a third of a cup right there. Okay, now I'm going to take my fork. I'm going to stab the yolk. Stab. All right, and now I'm going to very carefully whisk the milk, or half and half, which is half milk, half cream. Okay, and people use this in their coffees. That's my husband's half and half. And I'm just whisking these together. So when I whisk, I'm going around and around and around and around like that. Okay, so I'm kind of like the wheels on the bus go around and around, kind of like that. Going around, not lifting too high, and it's making a little bit of bubbles. And I'm rotating my dish as I whisk. And again, you want a small dish that your bread just fits inside, nothing huge. Now, some people will take this mixture and they will add a tiny splash of like vanilla extract, or some people put a little bit of salt in there. I don't like all that stuff. I like mine plain with just cinnamon. I love a cinnamon French toast. All right, so this is completely combined now. I'm going to take a spoon. Here's my spoon. And here is my jar of cinnamon. And I get my cinnamon at Costco. And sometimes Food Lion. I think Costco has it cheaper though than Food Lion. Food Lion, I would go to the Hispanic section of the grocery store to see if you can find ground cinnamon. That's the cheaper place to get it. Or Costco has it. And I'm going to take a little bit of the cinnamon on my spoon, and then I'm going to shake, 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 shake across the top of it to give a little bit of a coating of the cinnamon. And I do not stir the cinnamon in. I like to have a layer on the top of it. And this is my preference. You do you. Whatever it is that you like. Okay. All right. So there's the cinnamon on there. Now, I have my bread pieces. So this bread's a few days old. It's, you know, not super soft anymore. It's starting to firm up because it's getting old. But there's no mold on it or anything. We don't want to eat moldy bread. So do look at your bread first to make sure, you know, it's okay. This griddle is now warm. I can hover my hand over it about 2 inches and I can feel the heat. So it is ready. And I am going to be lining up my bread like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I want to be careful. I don't just plop it down somewhere. I need to pay attention to where I'm putting it so I can fit all of the pieces on at the same time. This is a non-stick griddle, and so therefore I need to use a non-stick turner. Remember, this is a type of spatula for turning things over, and actually this is a really old spatula. I got this when I turned 19 and moved out of my parents' house, and so this was my first spatula, and I'm really old, so this thing's really old too. So this is the last surviving kitchen tool I have from way back in the day. So now I'm going to quickly drop this into the mixture and flip it over. I'm using another fork to flip it so I don't have to wash my hands again. And now I'm picking it up, drippity drip, drip, drip. And I have my dish right next to that griddle. And now I'm going to set it on. You'll hear it sizzle. Okay. I'm gonna add a little tiny bit more cinnamon because I like mine cinnamony. And there goes my next piece of bread and flip. Okay, I'm gonna flip back one more time just to make sure it's got that liquid. Okay, good. Drippity drip drip with my 2 forks. Okay, and next to this one. Okay, little bit more cinnamon. Okay, and cinnamon actually is very good for you. Cinnamon helps to regulate your blood sugar. Okay, so if you know someone who is a diabetic, then cinnamon is good for them for helping them regulate blood sugar. All right, drippity drip. All right, and cinnamon actually comes from the bark of a certain type of tree. And that's why when you get cinnamon sticks, they're kind of like curled up looking. It's because they cut the bark off and then it wants to curl back up like it wants to wrap back around that tree again. All right, it's looking good, drippity drip. Next one on, a little bit more cinnamon. So I probably have probably maybe 1/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon per piece of bread, or each round that I do in there, and it's probably about 1/4 of a teaspoon. If you want to measure, maybe it's more like 1/8 of a teaspoon, somewhere in between the two, if you want to measure. All right, and then this one on, and then let's see, I have one more piece of bread in there. There we go. And I'm not going to cook up the little ends of the bread. Don't care for those, but I can dry those or keep them in a freezer bag and then eventually let them dry and chop them up, whatever, mix a little oil and then bake them in the oven and make croutons out of them. So nothing goes to waste, or let them dry, process them in a food processor to make breadcrumbs. All right, so now I'm going to flip my first one. So I go underneath, lift, and then flip right where it was. Underneath, lift, flip right where it was. Okay, and this one here, yep, it's ready. Okay, underneath, wiggle, 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 lift, flip right where it is. Wiggle, 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 lift, and flip. Oh, okay, so that one I missed. I landed on top of the other one, so I need to move it out of the way. All right, there we go. I'll let these sit for another second before I flip them. So the egg mixture and the half and half mixture, it makes like a little bit of a crusty looking thing on there when you go to make it. So lots of people do this differently. Some people will cook them in butter. You know, I just don't want all that extra fat in mine. So, oh, my hair's in the way. All right, wiggle, 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 lift, flip. Okay, and wiggle, wiggle, lift, flip. All right, and I'm just gonna cook this through to make sure it's cooked on both sides. And then that's it. I'm gonna pull it off and I'm going to serve it with maple syrup. So I know a lot of you like pancake syrup, which is not good for you. Pancake syrup is made from high fructose corn syrup or corn syrup. It has food coloring in it. It has caramel coloring, lots of preservatives. That stuff is not good for you at all. Okay, so if you can afford it, you want to buy maple syrup that's 100% maple syrup. It's usually on the top shelf where they sell maple syrup in the grocery store. And remember, this comes from where? Where does maple syrup come from? Yep, a sugar maple tree. Okay, you can tap, when we talk about this in class, you can tap other type of maples too, but the sugar maple tree has the most sweet that comes out of it. It doesn't come out like the syrup. This actually has to be cooked down. Okay, so the sap that runs out of it. All right, I'm gonna grab my plate and this is done. I'm gonna pull these off. Yeah, looks good. Nice French toast right there. Okay, and I always like the first side that went on to the griddle first. That's why I always flip these over. If it was a pancake, I don't do that. If it's a pancake, once I flip, the side that's now up is the top side, and then I take those off straight. But this, I like to flip them back over. I think they just look prettier. All right, and there is my French toast. I'm going to unplug my griddle. And when you go to wash this here, you want to take out the temperature control thing here. Hold this part out of the water and you hand wash this. This is not going to the dishwasher. So keep this part above your sink and then you can wash this carefully. You don't want to scratch your nonstick surface. All right, and let me taste this. So I'm going to set this down. Let me get this out of the way. All right, here we go. All right, I'm not gonna eat all of these. I'm gonna give some to my husband. I have this big bottle of maple syrup that's already open. So this has a cork top. Woo. All right, so I'm just gonna put a little bit on that. He doesn't care for maple syrup. So I'm just gonna put it on the little bottom piece right there so it doesn't get all over them. And then I'm gonna cut a little square off and then taste it and see how I did. Very good. All right, so here's an easy breakfast for you. It goes pretty quick. Enjoy.